The smell was terrible. Rotten food, oil, and old rust filled the air. At the back of the giant space station on Soren 3, where no one wanted to go, a little alien girl crouched behind a trash bin. Her body was thin, her skin bruised, and her eyes wide with fear. She didn't speak, didn't move much. Just crawled to a half-eaten meal someone had thrown away. And like an animal, she ate it cold, dirty, and moldy. People passed her, glanced for a second, then kept walking, to them. She was just another alien stray, not worth a second thought. Some even laughed or threw more scraps, watching her scramble for them like a dog. But one human man stopped. His name was Jack Harlan, a former engineer, now working odd jobs on the edge of space. He wasn't rich, he wasn't powerful, and he certainly wasn't a hero, but he had a habit of noticing what others ignored. And today, he noticed her. He didn't say anything at first. He just stood there, watching her. She didn't notice him, too focused on licking crumbs from a metal plate. Her fingers were cut. Her clothes were nothing but rags, and her hair was messy and matted like an old rope. But when Jack looked into her eyes, he didn't see an animal. He saw a child, lost, broken, and alone. Slowly, he stepped forward. "Hey," he said gently. The girl froze, her body tensed, as if expecting to be hit. Jack stopped too, raising both his hands. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said softly. "Are you hungry?" The girl didn't answer. She just stared at him, her lips trembling. Then very slowly, she backed away and hissed like a cornered creature. Jack reached into his bag and pulled out a wrapped food bar. He placed it on the ground and stepped back. She stared at it, then at him. A long minute passed. Then she crawled forward and grabbed it. She tore the wrapper with her teeth and bit into it like it was her first meal in weeks. Jack didn't move. He just watched her eat with shaking hands, crumbs falling from her mouth. "What's your name?" he asked, but she didn't answer. She was too focused on chewing. Jack noticed something then, a small tattoo on her wrist, hidden under dirt. It looked like a royal symbol. Very old, very rare. That wasn't a random street girl, he realized. There was a story here, and it was buried under layers of fear and silence. "Do you have a family?" Jack asked. The girl looked up, her big yellow eyes filled with confusion. She didn't understand the words, or maybe she had forgotten what they meant. He knelt slowly, keeping his voice calm. "Do you want to come with me? I have food, water, a bed." She looked like she didn't trust him, but also like she wanted to. There was a war inside her eyes, and finally, her body relaxed just a little. She nodded just once. Jack held out his hand. She stared at it, confused. Then, very carefully, she placed her small, dirty hand in his. It was cold, so cold it hurt. He guided her back to his room, a small one near the docks. It wasn't fancy, but it was warm, clean, and safe. The girl sat on the edge of the bed, looking around like she didn't belong. Jack handed her a warm cup of broth. She sipped it slowly, eyes darting to the door again and again. "Easy," Jack said. "You're safe here." She didn't answer, but her shoulders relaxed just a little later that night, as she slept curled up in a blanket like a scared kitten. Jack sat nearby, watching over her. He had no idea who she was. He didn't know why she was living like a dog in the streets. But something deep inside him told him this was not an accident. This girl had secrets, and someone had tried to erase her. But he had seen her, not as a stray, not as a burden, but as someone worth saving. And maybe, just maybe, he would be the first person in her life to show her what it meant to be cared for. Not because of who she was, but because someone finally looked close enough to see her as she really was. Not a beast, not a slave, but a princess. Asterisk. The little alien girl sat on the edge of the soft bed. Her eyes looked around the room, unsure if it was a trap or a dream. Her hands still trembled, even though they were no longer holding scraps of garbage, for the first time in who knows how long. She was clean. Jack had gently washed her hands and face, careful not to scare her. He had given her a soft shirt to wear, which looked far too big on her small body, but she hugged it like it was a treasure. She didn't speak, not because she didn't want to, but because maybe she didn't know how. Or maybe she'd forgotten how to trust. Jack sat on the floor across from her, letting her have the bed. He didn't ask questions, not yet. He only smiled at her, gently and patiently. He made some warm soup, poured it in a bowl, and placed it near her. She sniffed it first, like an animal, then tasted it. She didn't gobble this one. She sipped. Slowly, carefully, like she was learning how to be human, or something close to it. After a while, Jack reached for his old scanner. He pretended to scan the room, just in case she was afraid of machines. Then, with a friendly tone, he said, "Can I scan your wrist? Just want to check if you're okay." The girl looked down at her wrist, then at him. There was hesitation in her eyes, but she lifted her arm and held it out. Jack scanned, and the screen blinked with red lights. His eyes widened. The scanner pulled up old royal symbols, DNA markers, and a warning. Classified identity. Missing royal designate. Status. Presumed dead. Jack stared at the screen, then at the girl. She looked back at him with innocent, curious eyes, not knowing what he had just discovered. She wasn't just a lost child. She wasn't a street animal. She was royalty. Jack sat back slowly, trying to process it. How did a princess end up eating scraps like a dog? What happened to her family? And more importantly, who wanted her gone? Jack didn't say anything right away. He just smiled again and whispered, "You're safe now, little one." That night, she curled up under the blanket, and Jack stayed awake, watching the screen again and again. Royal bloodlines were rare, and royal children disappearing wasn't unheard of, especially during political uprisings. But no one had ever been found like this. He needed answers, but first he needed her to trust him. The next morning, she woke up before him. She was sitting in the corner, hugging her knees, watching him. Jack got up slowly and stretched, then smiled. "Morning, princess." She blinked, confused at the word. He quickly corrected, "I mean morning." "A friend." He didn't want to scare her. That day, he taught her a few simple words. He pointed to himself, "Jack," then pointed to her, "You?" She said nothing, but after a long silence, she whispered, "Leia." It wasn't much, but it was a start. A name, her name. "Nice to meet you, Leia," Jack said warmly. She gave a small nod, her lips curling into a tiny smile, just for a moment. Later, he checked the spaceport news quietly. No one had reported her missing. No rewards, no searches, no alerts. It was like the galaxy had forgotten her, or had been told to forget. Jack understood now why she had been thrown away. She was a threat to someone powerful, and whoever did it made sure no one would ever find her again. But they hadn't planned for one thing: a human with nothing to gain, choosing to care, choosing to see her as something more than trash. That night, Jack fixed a small music box. It played a gentle tune from Earth. He gave it to her, and she listened closely. Then she placed it near her heart and said, "Home." Jack's heart broke and healed at the same time. He didn't know what the next day would bring. But one thing was clear: this little girl, this alien princess, wasn't just a lost child anymore. She had a name, a place to sleep, and someone who looked at her like she mattered. She still didn't wear a crown, but Jack saw it already, in the way she held herself a little straighter, in the way her eyes no longer searched the floor for scraps. She was beginning to believe, not just that she could survive, but that maybe, just maybe, she deserved to. And that belief was more powerful than any title, because the real crown was never gold. It was the dignity she was learning to wear again. Jack walked through the crowded market of Sorin 3. He was looking for supplies, food, water, and something warm for Leia to wear. The air was noisy, filled with voices, engines, and music. No one noticed him, and that's how he liked it. But today, something felt different. He kept feeling eyes on him, like someone was watching from behind the fruit stands, or from the shadow of the repair shop. When he turned, there was nothing. Just movement, then stillness, whispers lost in the noise. Jack had been in enough shady places to know the feeling. Someone was tracking him, He bought what he needed quickly and moved fast. But as he turned a corner, he saw something on a wall. A small holographic flyer flickered for half a second. It showed an image, blurry, low quality, but it was her. It was Leia. And under it were words in a language he didn't recognize. He scanned it quietly. The translation made his blood go cold. Subject found, target alive, reward doubled. Upon confirmation, Jack didn't wait to read the rest. He pushed through the crowd and hurried back to his room. Back inside, Leia was sitting cross-legged on the bed. She had drawn shapes on a datapad. Jack had given her circles, stars, a sun, and something that looked like a crown. She looked up and smiled when he entered, but her smile faded when she saw his face. He locked the door, closed the blinds, and checked the cameras he had installed. Nothing. But he still felt it, the danger crawling closer. "Leia," he said, sitting beside her, "did anyone ever tell you not to show your wrist tattoo?" She blinked, confused, then slowly pulled up her sleeve to look at the faded mark. "I hide it," she said in broken English. "Bad people want me not alive." Jack nodded. "So she knew someone wanted her gone. Do you remember?" "Them?" he asked gently. She lowered her eyes, then whispered, "I see fire. I see Mother cry. I run, I hide. Then I forget." Jack's jaw tightened. Someone had tried to erase her, not just from the galaxy, but from her own mind. He couldn't imagine the pain she had lived through. He reached out, placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "You're not alone now," he said. "I promise, I won't let them take you." That night, he didn't sleep. He stayed up, reading files, hacking into old databases, searching for clues. And what he found only made things worse. Her family had ruled a system. Rich in resources, powerful and proud. But 5 years ago, a military coup wiped them out. The media called it a rebellion against tyranny. But Jack knew better. He read between the lines, saw how carefully the truth had been buried. Leia had been labeled as presumed dead. No one looked for her, not because they didn't care, but because someone powerful paid them not to. Suddenly, his screen flickered. A strange message popped up. "You're protecting something dangerous. Human." Jack's heart jumped. He shut down the terminal and grabbed his emergency bag. "Leia," he said urgently, waking her, "we have to go." She looked scared but trusted him. She slipped on her shoes, held his hand, and followed without question. They moved through the back halls of the spaceport, avoiding cameras. Jack knew a friend, old smuggler named Rook, who owed him a favor. Rook had a ship that could take them off-world without questions. They reached the docks, but someone was already there. A tall figure in dark armor stood near Rook's ship. The figure turned slowly, eyes glowing red behind the mask. Jack stepped in front of Leia. The figure spoke. "Give me the girl, and I'll let you walk away." Jack tightened his grip on his blaster. "She's under my protection," he said. Firmly, the figure tilted his head. "You think you can protect her from us?" Then came a sound from behind a second attacker. Jack reacted fast, firing once, twice, missing the first, hitting the second. Leia screamed and ducked behind a crate. Jack grabbed her hand and ran. They didn't stop until they reached a forgotten maintenance tunnel. He locked the door behind them and collapsed against the wall. Leia sat beside him, shaking. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I bring danger." Jack looked at her and shook his head. "No," he said. "You didn't bring danger. You were born into it. But now you're not running alone. We'll find the truth. We'll find your past. And we'll make them regret ever thinking you could be erased." In the dark, with whispers still echoing in the shadows, one human had made a choice to protect what the galaxy had thrown away. And somewhere deep inside, the little alien girl began to believe again that maybe she was meant for more. Asterisk. The cold wind of the maintenance tunnel blew through the narrow space. Jack sat with his back against the wall, his blaster resting beside him. Leia sat beside him, curled in a blanket, her small fingers still shaking. Her eyes stared at the floor, lost in thought, lost in fear. They had almost been caught. And now Jack knew There was a price on her head. He opened a small device and checked the darknet channels. It didn't take long. There it was. Clear and chilling, a photo of Leia, younger but recognizable. Bounty notice, wanted, royal designate, status, dangerous asset, reward, 500,000 credits. Alive or dead, Jack's heart tightened. That much money could change someone's life forever. Enough to buy a ship, a home, or an escape from any past, and worse enough to make desperate people do terrible things. He turned off the screen and looked at Leia. She noticed his stare and looked away. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "They want me gone." Jack placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "No, Leia," he said. "They want what you are, not who you are." She looked at him, her golden eyes wide and full of confusion. "I don't understand," she said softly. "They fear you," Jack replied, "because you're the last royal, if you live. People might hope again, and some very powerful people don't want that." She was silent, but her hands clenched the blanket tighter. Jack knew he couldn't hide her forever. Sooner or later, someone would come close enough to end it all. He had to move fast that evening. Jack met an old friend in the shadows of Dock 17, a smuggler named Rook. A man with half a metal face and a voice like crushed gravel. "You're in deep trouble, Jack," Rook muttered, lighting a smoke stick. "This bounty is spreading fast. Even bounty hunters from the outer rings are talking about it." Jack handed him a chip. "Can you get us off this planet? Quietly?" Rook raised an eyebrow. "Depends who's the girl." Jack didn't answer, but the look in his eyes told Rook everything. "Ah," Rook sighed. "So she's that girl. Can you help us or not?" Jack asked, voice steady. Rook thought for a moment, then nodded. "I'll need a day. Maybe 2. Meet me at the broken reactor zone at night. No one goes there. Too much radiation." Jack agreed and returned to Leia. She had drawn a crown again on the datapad, but this time it was broken in the middle. "I was a mistake," she said quietly when he sat beside her. Jack's heart sank. "No," he said firmly. "You were a miracle that someone tried to destroy." The next day, while Jack worked on gathering supplies, Leia stayed inside, but someone knocked on the door. 3 soft knocks, then silence. She froze. Her breath caught. She peeked through the tiny window. It was a man in a black cloak, standing still, holding something. He raised his hand and pressed a note against the glass. "I can help you, Princess," it read. Her heart pounded. She didn't open the door. She didn't speak, but the man stood there a while longer. Then he left. When Jack returned, she told him everything. He grew pale. "They were running out of time. They know you're here," he said. "We leave tonight. No waiting." That night, with the sound of alarms in the distance, Jack and Leia moved through the back alleys toward the broken reactor zone. But as they reached the edge, red lights blinked from above. "Drones." Jack grabbed Leia's hand. "Run," he whispered. They ran between the broken pipes and rubble. Shots fired behind them. One blast hit the ground near Leia's foot, throwing her down. Jack picked her up, not stopping, heart pounding. They reached the reactor zone where Rook's ship was waiting. Engines already hot. Rook waved from the ramp. "Move." Jack climbed aboard, placing Leia in a seat and locking the door behind them. As they lifted off, a missile exploded behind them, shaking the ship. Leia looked at Jack, her face pale. Am I worth this?" she asked. Jack looked at her and smiled. "You're not worth a bounty," he said. "You're worth a future." As the ship jumped into hyperspace, Leia looked out at the stars. Once they had meant danger, fear, and loneliness, but now, sitting beside a man who had risked everything for her, they began to feel like hope. The ship drifted silently in the cold space between stars. Rook's old freighter wasn't fancy, but it was fast. It had hidden panels, blocked signals, and enough tricks to fool even the best bounty hunters. For now, Jack and Leia were safe, but safe didn't mean free. Jack sat in the co-pilot seat, staring at the stars. Leia sat behind him, hugging her knees, wrapped in a blanket. Her eyes were heavy. But her mind was wide awake. She couldn't stop thinking about the people chasing her, about the broken crown. She kept drawing, and the strange dream she was having again. This time, the dreams were different. Not dark or painful, but soft and confusing. She saw a tall woman with blue eyes. The woman wore silver armor and had golden markings on her head. In the dream, the woman knelt in front of her, held her hands, and whispered a name, Aleya. Then came fire, loud noises, and screaming. Leia woke up gasping. Jack turned to her, worried. "You okay?" She nodded, wiping tears from her eyes, but then whispered, "I remember. A name." Aleya. Jack froze. He had heard that name in the ancient records. A royal child daughter of Queen Sarita of the Alexan line. Presumed dead, body never found. He knelt beside her, holding her hands gently. "Leia. That might be your real name." She looked at him, confused. "Aleya," she repeated slowly. It felt right, like something long lost returning home. Jack knew it was time. Time to stop running blind. Time to find the truth. They landed on a small, hidden planet called Velar 9. It was quiet, covered in deep forests and misty mountains, a place few remembered. But Jack knew someone who lived there, an elder named Talam, once a royal historian, now in hiding like many others after the fall of the old kingdoms. Talam's home was built inside a cave warmed by natural crystals. He was old, with silver hair, glowing eyes, and a voice like dry paper. When he saw Jack, he smiled. "Still chasing ghosts, are you?" Jack stepped aside, revealing Leia. Talam's smile vanished, replaced by wide eyes and a slow gasp. "By the stars," he whispered, stepping forward. "She lives." He studied her face, the tattoo on her wrist, the shape of her eyes he held her hand and looked into her eyes for a long time. "Do you know who you are, child?" he asked softly. She shook her head. "I was hungry. I lived in trash," she said quietly. "Then Jack found me." Talam's eyes filled with tears. He looked at Jack, voice shaking. "She is Aleya, daughter of Queen Sarita. She was hidden during the palace attack. Her mother died protecting her. We all thought she was lost." Leia sat still, not sure how to feel. She looked at her hands, her small fingers that once scraped the floor for food. Now they were being called royal. "But why me?" she asked. "Why did they want me gone?" Talam's expression turned hard. "Because you're a symbol," he said. "As long as you're alive, people know the Alexan bloodline still lives. The ones in power now fear that." He showed her an old pendant from her family silver with a sun crest. When Leia touched it, the center glowed with a soft light. The pendant recognized her. She gasped, her fingers trembling. "It's true," she whispered. "I'm really a princess." Back in the ship that night, Leia sat in silence. Jack gave her some warm food, but she barely touched it. "I don't know how to be royal," she said sadly. "I don't feel like a princess." Jack sat beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You're not a princess because of a title," he said. "You're one because of who you are. Kind, strong, brave, even when the galaxy tried to break you." Leia looked at him with teary eyes. "Then why do I still feel broken?" Jack smiled gently. "Because healing takes time, but you're not alone anymore." She leaned her head on his shoulder. For the first time she felt warm, not just from the blanket, but from something deeper, something like belonging. The next day, Talam handed Jack a sealed message. "Take her to the old assembly on Calro 7, he said. "There are still people loyal to her family, if she stands before them. They may rise again." Jack nodded, but deep inside, he knew the journey wouldn't be easy. If the bounty hunters found out she was still alive, if the enemy knew where she was going, they would do anything to stop her. But as he looked at Aleya, no longer just Leia, he saw someone stronger than before, not just a survivor, but a spark ready to light the stars. The truth had finally come out. Now came the hard part, becoming who she was always meant to be. Asterisk. The stars outside the ship looked peaceful, but inside Jack's chest, a storm was rising. He sat at the controls, guiding the ship toward Calrose 7. Each second brought them closer to the old assembly, closer to the moment Alea would have to stand as a princess. Behind him, Alea sat quietly, holding the pendant Talum had given her. She had cleaned it until it shined, but still, she looked unsure. Her eyes stared into space, as if searching for answers in the stars. "I'm not ready," she whispered. Jack heard her but didn't turn. He knew she needed time. He had made peace with one thing: he wouldn't force her to be anything. He was only here to protect her. Hours passed. The ship dropped from hyperspace into the orbit of Calrose 7, but something was wrong. The station above the planet was offline, floating like a dead husk, and in the distance, 3 ships blinking red. Jack's scanners screamed. They had been found. "Hold on," Jack shouted, flipping switches. The ship swerved as laser fire cut across the stars. Alea grabbed her seat tightly, her face pale. One blast hit the side, and sparks flew. "They're not bounty hunters," Jack growled. "These are military ships. From the people who took my mother's throne?" Alea asked. Jack nodded grimly. "They're not here to capture," he said. "They're here to erase." They managed to land on the icy surface of Calrose 7. The old assembly building stood nearby, ancient, stone-carved, and glowing faintly with forgotten energy. But behind them, enemy dropships were landing fast. Jack grabbed a blaster and handed Alea a small energy knife. "Only use it if you must," he said. She looked at the blade like it was a curse. "I don't want to fight," she whispered. Jack gave a small smile. "Then run, and don't look back." But Alea didn't run. She took the blade, her hands shaking. "I will go with you," she said, "even if I'm scared." They entered the assembly hall. Inside, old lights flickered on, recognizing royal blood. Alea stepped forward, and the ground glowed beneath her feet. The enemies followed soon after, 6 armored soldiers with plasma rifles. They aimed at her without a word, but Jack stepped in front of her, arms wide. "She's just a child," he shouted. "Let her go." One soldier replied coldly, "She is the last threat to peace. Remove her, and the galaxy remains quiet." Jack didn't move. "If peace means killing children," he said, "then your galaxy is already lost." A blast fired straight at Jack. He fell, blood blooming across his chest. Alea screamed, rushing to him. She held him as his body trembled. He looked up at her, barely able to speak. "You have to choose now," he said, voice weak. "Not who they want you to be, but who you really are," she cried. "I'm not ready. I'm not strong." He smiled gently. "You are. Because you care." Then he passed out. Something changed inside Alea. She stood up slowly, still shaking. The pendant around her neck glowed brighter than ever before. The soldiers paused, unsure. Alea stepped forward, holding her blade, not to kill, but to stand. "I am Alea of the Alexan line," she said, her voice echoing through the hall. "I am not a weapon. I am not your fear. I am your reminder that the old ways of mercy, justice, and kindness still live." The assembly hall responded. Ancient lights came alive. Holograms of past rulers appeared, bowing to her. The soldiers hesitated. One of them lowered his weapon. "This wasn't what I was told," he muttered. He looked at her, then at Jack lying on the floor. "She is not a monster." More soldiers lowered their rifles, but 2 remained loyal to the mission. They raised their guns. Before they could fire, blasts came from behind. Rook had arrived, with others, old rebels who had followed the Alexan cause in secret. They took down the last of the attackers. Jack was carried to safety, still alive but barely. Alea held his hand, whispering, "Stay with me, Jack. I need you. You're not just my protector, you're my heart." Hours later, the medic said Jack would survive. His wounds were bad, but not fatal. Alea sat beside him. She looked different now, not just cleaner, but stronger, her back straight, her eyes calm, her voice steady. She made a choice, not just to survive, but to lead, not with fear, but with hope. And when Jack opened his eyes again, she smiled. "I'm ready now," she said, "because you believed in me first." The halls of the old assembly had never seen such silence. Ancient walls that once echoed with arguments and politics now stood still. Bathed in soft light, they watched a little alien girl, no longer dirty, no longer crawling, stand tall and speak with courage. Alea wore a clean robe now, stitched together by the hands of rebels who still remembered her mother. Her short hair was brushed back, her face calm. She wasn't a warrior, and she wasn't a queen yet, but in her heart, she had become something even stronger. She had become herself. Jack sat nearby, weak but smiling. His bandages were fresh, and he still winced when he moved. But his eyes never left Alea. He had seen her at her lowest. Now he watched her rise. The old rebels and loyal assembly members formed a small circle around her. They listened as she told her story, not with anger, not with pride, but with truth. "I was thrown away like trash," Alea said softly. "I was called worthless. I was chased, hunted, and forgotten." The crowd listened in silence. "But one human," she continued, glancing at Jack, "saw something in me. He didn't know I was royal. He didn't care. He saw me hungry and gave me food. He saw me shaking and gave me shelter. He saw a little girl and called her a person." Many lowered their eyes, ashamed. Others nodded, tears in their eyes. Alea held up her pendant, the Alexan symbol glowing bright. "This doesn't make me special," she said. "It's only a reminder that no one is born a leader. We become one by standing up for those who can't." Her voice was soft, but it carried through the entire chamber. "You don't have to kneel to me," she said. "I don't want servants. I want allies. I want builders, teachers, healers. Let's fix what was broken, not by power, but by kindness." Silence followed, then applause. Not loud or forced, but real. The kind that grows like fire, one person, then another, until the whole hall clapped that night. The stars above Kuro 7 looked different, clearer, brighter, as if the sky itself had been waiting for this moment. Jack sat outside the old building, wrapped in a blanket. Alea sat beside him, her feet swinging slightly off the stone edge. "You did it," Jack whispered. "No," she replied. "We did," Jack chuckled softly. "So what now, princess?" She looked up, thoughtful. "Now we build," she said. "Not palaces, but schools, hospitals, homes." She looked at him with a warm smile. "You're staying, right?" Jack raised an eyebrow. "You're giving orders already?" She laughed, quietly, a sound that hadn't been heard in years. "Not an order," she said. "Hope," he nodded. "Then yeah, I'm not going anywhere over the following weeks." Something amazing began. Aliens from all across nearby systems came to Kalros 7. They heard whispers that the lost princess had returned, that she was building a new kind of kingdom, one that welcomed all. She never sat on a throne. She sat on the ground with children. She never wore a crown. She wore simple robes, hands always busy helping others. She visited farms, listened to miners, hugged the sick, and danced with orphans. Her kindness was not a performance. It was who she had always been, buried deep under fear, now shining bright. And Jack, the human who had once picked her up from the garbage pile, now walked beside her, not as a bodyguard, not as a servant, but as family. When someone once called him the royal advisor, he laughed. "I'm just her stubborn uncle," he joked. But Alea always introduced him as, "This is Jack, the man who saved me." One day, a reporter asked Alea, "What was the hardest part of becoming who you are now?" She didn't hesitate. "Believing I was worth saving," she said, "and letting go of who I was told to be." Another question came. "If you had never met the human, what would have happened?" She paused, her eyes grew soft. "I would have faded," she said, "into the dirt, into the dark. But he found me, and reminded me that even scraps have value, that every life has meaning, even if it starts in the trash." That night, as the lights dimmed and the stars blinked above, Alea stood at the highest point of the assembly roof. She looked over the land, not as a ruler, but as a guardian. Jack stood beside her, one hand resting on her shoulder. "You're not a dog anymore, kid," he said quietly. She smiled, eyes glistening. "I never was. They just couldn't see it." He nodded. "But I did." She leaned her head gently against his side. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." And as the wind brushed through her hair and the stars watched in silence, the little girl who once ate from scraps now stood above a kingdom she helped heal, not with fear, not with war, but with one powerful truth, that sometimes it only takes one person to see a princess where the world saw nothing.